What's going on, Jets fans? It is over. The season is over, and we are now moving forward into the 2022 offseason. The Jets lose to the Buffalo Bills today. I believe the final score was 27-10. Chad, how you doing this fine evening? I'm gonna fix your camera.
Yeah, because I know people like me, but they don't want it. I'm like right in their living room.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
How
and
you?
there's my drill just hanging out.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's power tools, baby. I love it.
why not? Um, I'm okay. Look, this isn't the way that we really wanted to end the season. I think if we could have wrapped that game up at halftime, um, or if we could have wrapped that game up after the 46-yard absolute dart, like literally the one good play that we had today, that would have been great, but that's
Mm-hmm.
not how it shaked out. Um, so look, I mean, it wasn't terrible. I think we got reminded today that the offensive line has a lot more questions than we probably had thought. Um, I don't know, what else can you say about this game? You
Yeah.
know?
It's a bad one, man. And we'll spend time talking about this game, but we're not gonna like spend the entire evening. I feel like I feel like that would be a disservice because the season's over now, and we now need to in all seriousness, we need to look forward to the off season because this game, in the long term, grand scheme of things, should be something that hopefully we just forget about because this game didn't mean anything, obviously. We'll get to our first comment of the game. Of the stream. It's from Johnny Jets. He says, "Not gonna put all the blame on Zach as he had no chance, but the offense in general was disgusting, to put it nicely." So let's talk about that actually. So, what were your thoughts on the offense's performance? Obviously, it was disgusting. I don't think there's two ways about it. But what were some of your thoughts just in general on the offensive line's performance, Zach's performance, maybe even the supporting cast, receivers, tight ends, running backs, that sort of stuff? What were your thoughts?
It was bad. There's been a narrative that's popped up over the past couple weeks that maybe the offensive line isn't as bad as we originally thought that they were. Um, and maybe it's they were okay, but Connor McDermott specifically got worked over today, and Laurent Duvernay, he got worked over really bad. Um, there is no. Oh man, Bob Saget died.
Yeah, he did. He did die. Yeah. So if you're not trying to interrupt your flow over there, but if you hadn't heard the news, Bob Saget, comedian and guy, the main character in Full House, he did die this today. So kind of sucky news.
Yeah, Jesus. Anyway, no, Laurent Duvernay got worked over really bad. I forget who he was going against, but look, you don't give up 9 sacks without having some serious issues. So I think we're safe to reopen that Evan Neal conversation as sitting at number 4. I don't understand why we can't have a swing tackle. What is so wrong about that? Um, but maybe if somebody is sitting there, I still think guard or center or right guard or center at number 10, and I don't know. I don't know. I think that the offensive line left a lot to be desired today, and unfortunately, especially with the offensive line, we have a lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, I'm not gonna beat up, and I'm gonna be hopefully creating a video here in the next day or so. I want to make a video for the off season. Um, I'm not gonna sit here and say the offensive line was good. It was terrible, absolutely awful today. Like you said, you can't give up 8, 9 sacks without serious problems up front. Uh, but we had like a billion of our backups in today. It's not just the offensive line. It was also the receivers not being able to get open. It was also Zach Wilson at times. Maybe not. Maybe not playing hero ball, but maybe doing some of the things that got him into some trouble earlier in the season, trying to do too much, hold the ball a little bit longer. I think that when you see, it's like I've said before with the Darnold stuff, the Gase stuff that we saw. you can't just point the finger at one person. Like, there's no one entity on this offense that is strictly to blame. Like, everybody gets a hand in this really crappy performance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, who is Tariq Black? Did you know who he was? Did you...
Well, it's funny that we got a comment about it. Yeah, and I was tweeting Rodrigo during the game. Tariq Black, yeah, had that miraculous sideline catch, looked good, and then he had a ball bounce right off of his face as well.
I was sitting there. I was actually watching the game with my dad. I figured, why not? It's the last game of the year. I looked there. I'm like, do you know who that guy is? He's like, no, I have no idea who that guy is. Well, and that kind of speaks volumes about the state of this team in Week 18 of 2021. Sorry, 2022 now.
Yep. I mean, the injuries have been just brutal. Down the stretch, we are really, really injured. And of course, every team goes through injuries. I feel like we constantly have to say that. But really, truly, there aren't too many teams that are down their top 4 wide receivers going into this week. Like, that's a pretty rare thing. I know the Bucks are having some problems in the receiving room. But, I mean, man, the offensive line, too. Becton out. We had Fant out. Connor McGovern out. Like, it's a ton of dudes. Just, it's important positions, too. You can't have units like that just completely decimated and then have success. So
absolutely.
We'll get to this comment because it is prudent, because it is the off season now. Johnny Jets, he says, flipping cards lose to the Hawks, which drops the Seattle Seahawks pick to the 10 spot. And if you didn't know this, the Jets now hold officially the 4th overall pick and the 10th overall pick coming up in this draft. You said some positions that you wanted, Chad. What are your overall thoughts on just the fact that we will be holding 2 top 10 picks and 1 in the top 5 as well? Thoughts on what Joe Douglas can do, with that kind of capital? Because that's serious capital.
It is, and from a fan perspective, I mean, I like the fact that there's just something about having a top 10 pick, let alone 2 top 10 picks, that gives us something to talk about.
It does.
It gives us something to talk about for the next 4 months. So I really appreciate that. We all know that Joe Douglas is going to make a significant move. I think, anything's on the table. I mean, we could possibly see him package those picks and trade down a little bit. We could see him do something with that 10th pick and then maybe go back up. I think anything is on the board. And what I like is having a lot of possibilities. It gives us a lot to talk about, and it's going to make the offseason a little bit more fun. It's a lot more possibilities and a lot more fun to think about 2 as opposed to 1. And yeah, it sucks because I think we could have got 7 or something like that. But you know what? At the end of the day, we have 2 top 10 picks, and I don't think anybody's really going to be complaining about that.
Yeah, and I think not trying to be like a complete sunshiner right now, but like if you had told me at the beginning of the year that Seattle pick was going to be the 10th overall draft pick, I probably would have laughed at you and I would have called you crazy. Like, that's fantastic that we got that draft pick from them. Justin Jets, he says, Salah. All right, Mimsy. Everyone's hurt. It's your shot. Get out there. ... False start. Yeah, Mims is a goner, right? Like, we talked a very tiny bit about Mims last week. We're ready to move on, right? Like, we have to either trade him or let him come to camp and then eventually probably get cut, right? Like, there's no way we can realistically count on him moving forward, right?
No, not at all. I've never seen somebody come immediately in a game and just like have this. I mean, and you can't say it's like a backbreaking penalty, but it's just this unbelievable, like, untimely penalties in every game that he's in. It's like how Corey Davis has that like 1 drop a game. It's like Mims had that 1 penalty a game. Like, it's just.
I know, dude.
And we were all rooting for him too.
Yes. Well, and again, I have a ton of respect for James. He's the guy that we have on the channel from Jets X Factor, and he's a guy that knows a lot about football. He's played football. He studies football. and he was extremely optimistic about Denzel Mims. That was like his guy going into this season. And, he was projecting him to be, a 1,000-yard receiver this season. So to say that Denzel Mims disappointed us as fans would be a critical understatement, in my opinion. So we'll leave it at that. I am tired of talking about Denzel Mims. Just an absolute disaster. All right, the Hex Jet. He says, forget this game. Really shouldn't have expected anything else. That's true. We shouldn't have expected anything else. It was on the road. Buffalo had everything to play for. This was not a meaningless Week 18 game for them. They needed this game. I remember, before the season started, we all kind of talked about how, hey, like maybe Buffalo have wrapped things up already by Week 18 and they won't need this football game. The exact opposite. They needed this game more than anything to get the division. And, it was the first time they had locked up the division at home. I think it was like in 26 years or something like that. So that was pretty cool for their fans, I suppose. But HexJet says, but big picture, the team improved big time down the stretch. All eyes are on JD. There's a lot of comments, and I will do my best to get to you guys. So, if you're filling in the chat, I will get to you one at a time. If you want me to read your comment faster, feel free to, drop a super chat, but no requirement there, of course. What are your thoughts on JD this offseason? We know that there's a huge opportunity ahead of him right now with the fourth most cap space in the NFL as we sit here today. 2 top 10 picks, 2 second-round picks, plenty of mid-round picks as well. I feel like this is kind of like a turning point for him as a general manager for this franchise. What are your thoughts on the pressure that he's going to be, up against? Because there's a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, because these fans, the fans of this team, everybody around this team are really expecting them to be better. And actually, I'm not going to say contenders, but much better and much improved going into next season. And everybody knows where we are in the cap space situation. Everybody knows where we are with the draft picks. We're expected. I've already heard some rumblings saying that we're expected to make some splashes or whatever in free agency. So I think the pressure is on for JD, and it's on right now, and it's going to be on until we go into next season because again, there's a lot of expectations, and it kind of all falls on him. I mean, we like Zach, we like Rob Saleh, so now it's going to be like we know we have a talent issue. Right, we know that this team has a talent issue, and the question is, what can we do in one offseason to help to fix it? Yeah. And for what it's worth, it all goes to the top, and it's all going to kind of fall down on JD.
Yeah, he has a ton of pressure, and I think you said it really well. Like, we're not expecting necessarily to be a playoff team. I personally don't see that for us. And I know that I talked about, 8 wins this season before the season started. I was drinking that Kool-Aid hard. I think that that's now, closer to my projection for next season. And that's without having even seen how this offseason plays out. I'm sitting at that 7-8 win mark because there's still there's a ton of work to be done with this franchise, with this team. There's just so many holes. And it's like, you can't look at any position group and say, done. Like we're happy with Elijah Moore, a lot of us, but the wide receiver room needs so much work. The tight end room. I think we could probably put all of the tight ends on a rocket ship and blast them off to the moon at this point. I don't want any of these guys back in the tight end room. We like Michael Carter at the running back position. He needs probably a guy to come in and, be a part of the rotation a little bit more reliable. We need a power back. We need we need offensive line help. We need a guard. We need probably another offensive tackle. I know a lot of people want Linderbaum. That's the comment I have on the screen right now. Tons of people are going to want the Jets to take Tyler Linderbaum with that 10th overall pick. That's where people are going to want him to go. Fans especially. And then you go to the defensive side. our cornerbacks got picked on a little bit today. When Josh Allen wasn't throwing it inaccurately, like Eccles had his turn, Bryce Hall had his turn getting picked on, and as happy as I am with Bryce Hall's season, the one thing I will say, he doesn't really get his hands on the football enough, I don't think. Like, he didn't have any interceptions this season. Did he have one or did he have zero? I can't recall.
I don't think he had any.
And so, moving forward, maybe we need a cornerback that can get his hands on the football and make some plays. And I'm not just talking about interceptions, because I know that that's not like the be-all, end-all, but, pass defense, we need a guy that can get his hands on the football. The safety position, Marcus May, he's coming off of injury. We've got the guy from the Las Vegas Raiders, who I can never remember, LaMarcus Joyner. Joyner, injured and was out for the season from week 1 on. Ashton Davis, huge question mark. And honestly, I don't even know if we can count on Ashton Davis. He's been too inconsistent with his tackling and his pursuit angles on defense. So, linebacker, I'll throw another position group out there. Linebacker is another problem area. CJ Mosley, you feel good about him. But what about Quincy Williams? Should he be a starter on defense for us? We know Jared Davis was kind of a flop move this offseason. There's just so many holes. So to connect it back to what I was saying, I don't know if we can sit here and say JD can possibly fill every hole this offseason, but there's going to be a lot of fans that expect him to do that. And so that's where I think the pressure comes from.
Right. And by the time we get to week 1, we would have talked ourselves into such a frenzy that the problem is that we're going to expect to be a playoff team by the time we get to week 1 going next year. And
you're probably right.
Because that's what we always do. We're like, oh, we had a great off season. You know what? This schedule looks winnable. I was thinking about going back to one of the videos from when we made the season predictions and looking at that and trying to remember. I don't know if you consider doing that or not, because I don't remember what week it was. It had to be right before we started. But I remember all 4 of us made season predictions. I'm going to say I think I said 6 wins, but
that's good. I mean, that's pretty doggone close, man. I should have stayed to my 7-win total like I had been saying all off season, and then right before the season I got real excited. So, yeah, no, man, I think that it's important that as fans we try to be optimistic but have that balance of, having realistic expectations, because there's just a ton of holes on this team. There really are. Elliot Spencer, good to see you in the chat. He says, I'm relieved that another challenging season is over, but as antithetical as it is for a Jets fan's thinking, I feel optimistic about 2022. Jets are young and still have lots of room to improve. That's the thing that's nice, is they can address needs and not really worry about whether or not it's a need. They're going to be swinging for a ton of position groups, and they're all likely to be needs. So I agree with you. There should be there should be optimism going into this off season, but I'm gonna be very careful this off season to not let myself get ahead of what I think really will end up happening. So Vern says, the most wonderful time of the year to be a Jets fan, the off season. DSMY73 defense. Zach stepped up today, but O-line clearly needs work this offseason. Zach, I don't know if I could say Zach stepped up today, but I think Zach did his best. You know what I mean? There was just nobody around him today. So I think that he did as best he could. And I'm really proud that he didn't have any turnovers, no interceptions to end the season. So good by him to improve in that area for sure. Rick Fisher, we agree with you. Mims is proverbial toast. Hex Jet says, despite all the pain this year, I feel great about moving forward. And that was mission number 1. Thomas Cahill, not our first, but one of our first draft comments of the night. He's saying, let's go after the safety, Hamilton, at number 4. get the offensive tackle at 9, who I don't think he's going to be there at 9. There's a lot of people that say he might be the best offensive lineman in the draft. So Brandon Scherf would be interesting in free agency. He's going to be very expensive, though. I worry about his health as well. He's been injured a lot in his career. Chad, let's hear your take on the safety position. I don't think I've heard you talk about this one. So there's a hell of a safety prospect. Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. Just go ahead and spit about what you think, whether or not we should take a safety, him specifically. What are your thoughts?
Well, the good news is that someone is going to be available at number 10 that we don't expect to be available. And I think the question is, if it's a safety there, do you make a decision to go for that? And I would say yes, as long as we did something to address the offense at 4. I don't think you could go double defense with 4 and 10. Do we need safety help? Yes. Do we need another corner? Also, yes. So I don't know enough about Hamilton right now to say that he's the guy, or if you can try to find that guy in rounds 2, 3, or onward. But I would say that we certainly do need safety help. I think Marcus May is not coming back, right? That's pretty much a done deal.
Maybe not. He's going to come cheap regardless of what team he signs with, because he is coming off of the injury and he has that off the field thing with the DUI. The question is do the Jets want him back? Like, is there any interest from them to get him back? I personally think they might actually. They might want him back because they know they're going to be. There's what safety are you looking at right now on this roster that you're like, we gotta keep that guy?
Well, I will say, as many question marks as there are around Ashton Davis, I have not heard the heat about him that I heard in the first half of the season. I'm not going to say that he got better, but he certainly didn't get any worse, because everybody was just absolutely dogging on Ashton Davis for a while there, just like we were hearing about. I mean, it's kind of like, how you follow the chatter and, you hear like the whole thing about Zach throwing balls in the dirt and stuff, which he was. The whole argument against Ashton Davis was, he's taking these bad angles. He can't tackle. I'm not saying he's great, but I didn't hear any of those kind of complaints that I heard, especially in the beginning of the season.
I'm not comfortable with Ashton Davis as a starter next year. As a backup, I think that could be okay. But he struggles really, really badly with taking proper angles. A lot of times the runs that we've given up in the back end, he's constantly it's like he's over pursuing, and he's coming up too far rather than playing the safety position. And then we wind up giving up a run for 30, 40, 50 yards down the field. So is that his only job as the safety? No. And can he get better this offseason? Yes. I don't know, man. I'm worried about the safety position in general. I did like your take that maybe if he falls a little bit, that could be interesting. Like if a safety falls, but I don't think he's going to fall to 10. Justin Jets actually doesn't even think he's going to be there at 4, which I'm not sure I agree with. I think he'll be available for us at 4. But I just personally don't think that Joe Douglas is going to take a safety. I think that he doesn't value the position. Clearly, he wanted to trade Jamal Adams, and the Marcus May stuff. We'll see. He tagged him, and I think they were hopeful that he could prove it. On the tag, and they could re-sign him. What did you have on your mind, Chad?
Are you ranking safety as our biggest defensive need at now, or are you still thinking linebacker or something else?
So I don't value safety, but because of who the players that we have on the roster right now and the players that we might not have on the roster, I just right now I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, like, who are the safeties that we like on this football team? And to me right now, I don't know if there's any, truthfully. Yeah. And so do I value safety more than linebacker or edge? Absolutely not. Cornerback, no. Cornerback's always going to be prioritized more than a safety would. I think it's a position of dire need, actually. I just wouldn't spend the first round picks on the safety position. I think that's where you start to lose me a little bit. But I do know that Hamilton's really, really good, and he's going to go in the top 10. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, Elliot Spencer, he says, I thoroughly enjoyed tuning into the show. Strange as this may seem, I've enjoyed connecting with so many Jets fans on social media, mainly Twitter. You guys make me want to be a better fan. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's interesting doing this online and being able to communicate with different people. That is one of the coolest things about this. So thank you for the comment. Thomas Cahill, he says, need to cut 5 guys to up the cap. Which 5 guys? Because they already cut Shaq Lawson, who I think we knew they were going to cut. That saved $9 million against the cap. I don't think there was any way they were going to keep him. A bunch of guys they're on expiring contracts. Like Jamison Crowder, expiring contract. Keelan Cole, expiring contract. Braxton Berrios, expiring contract. The list goes on and on and on. There's a bunch of guys that are going to be just leaving because their contracts are up. So I don't know necessarily who I'm cutting. That's an interesting little comment, though. What do you think, Chad? Who are some guys that you think are cut candidates, not guys that are on expiring contracts?
Well, I think it's worth noting at this moment we have the 4th highest cap space going into the off season. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say it's like this huge issue, if you will. I don't know what's going to happen with the aforementioned LaMarcus Joyner, but I just looked it up. He's 31, and he's coming off an injury, so I could see him being as a candidate. Obviously, especially if we go.
He's on that 1-year deal, though, isn't he?
He very well may be.
I think he is.
Beyond that, Jamison Crowder certainly a goner. Morgan Moses, I think, is a question mark depending on what happens.
These are all 1-year contracts, though. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's hard because there are a bunch of dudes. I think it's 20. I think it's 20 players on the team that are on expiring contracts right now. So to get back to the question, or I guess to his comment, cutting 5 guys, I don't know who I'm cutting. And if you guys want to do it in the chat, be my guest. I'm not sure who we're cutting. Tyler Kroft is a guy who's on a 1-year deal. I would consider cutting him, but he's not an option. Tevin Coleman, he's on a 1-year deal. He's going to be gone. He's not coming back. So it's going to be very, very interesting because I think they need to re-sign some of these guys, like Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. We should probably bring him back. We should re-sign him. Morgan Moses, he's not perfect, but I think we need to try to re-sign him to bring back and to have some depth on the offensive line. Jamison Crowder, I think there's a lot of people that are going to want to re-sign him. I personally wouldn't. I would re-sign Braxton Berrios over him. Yeah. Keelan Cole, I'm personally out on Keelan Cole, but there are again some people that think that he should be brought back. So I'm not sure, man. I don't know if we're going to be able to cut a bunch of people to create more cap space. And in fact, I think that the cap number that we currently have might be even a little bit of fool's gold because there are players that we need to re-sign. So we may end up, with a good amount of cap space, but we need to bring some of these guys back. You can't let them all walk. I think that would be a mistake, right? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Because, we obviously want to improve the football team, but refreshing the deck every single offseason, there's just never going to be any continuity. So what are your thoughts on that specifically? Not necessarily cutting people, but re-signing some of these guys and the importance of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is that there's so many holes on this team that you're going to have to re-sign some guys. I'm not as low on Jared Davis as you guys are. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, but I didn't think that he was that terrible. But as I'm looking at who's going to be free agents going into this year, Marcus May probably gone. Jamison Crowder probably gone. Keelan Cole, I don't know. I would bring him back. Um, Laurent Duvernay Tardif, not according to what I saw today. One game doesn't define your entire career, but I think he's a serviceable backup. I don't know that I want him to be a starter going into next year. Um, Joe Flacco. Oh, this site still has Alex Lewis listed as a free agent for us. I guess he
I
didn't play this year at all.
Yeah, I think he might even be one of those guys that may never play football again. Like
Yeah.
that's at this point, like how can you sit here and say he'll be back?
Um, Dan Feeney probably gone. Um, Lamarcus Joyner probably gone. Tyler.
Foley Fatakasi is one of those guys. Like, are you bringing him back?
Yes, I'm gonna say yes.
Yep. And I think it's probably fair. It just depends on the contract too, though. Like he's a run stuffing defensive tackle. You know, how many run stuffing D tackles do we really like is that a position that's hard to fill? Like is that a role that's tough that's difficult to fill? So I just don't want to overspend on a guy like a Foley Fatakasi when we have so many premium positions that need to be filled.
Here's here's a tough one for you. What about Nathan Shepard?
No, see ya, Nate. The penalties were not great. Let's just say that. Nate, and he should have had a penalty today for tripping, apparently. I didn't see it on the field, but I saw on Twitter and on the broadcast, apparently he had a blatant trip on a running back in the game. So he could have technically had another penalty to his name if the refs had seen it. Jason Rhodes says we need to pass on Hamilton. Vern, he says 10 could be a prime spot for someone to trade up for a quarterback of their preference. This is actually a really good take because we know there's not necessarily a Trevor Lawrence, a Zach Wilson, a Trey Lance, a Justin Fields. This is not the same type of draft class in regards to the quarterback position. So that area could be one where a team might get a little bit thirsty for a quarterback and move up. What are your thoughts on that? Would you be, I mean, I think you'd have to be, right? You'd be totally in on that, like trading back, letting some team come up for a quarterback. You'd get probably a future first round pick depending on where that team's trading up from. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm looking to see where the Steelers are drafting.
They're in the playoffs as of right now. So they might their draft position. That's an interesting pull too by you, because they're definitely going to be in the quarterback hunt for sure. I actually could see them going the veteran route, making a trade for a quarterback. I'm not necessarily thinking Deshaun Watson, but they might make a move for a veteran quarterback and draft somebody if that makes any sense. Go ahead.
Also, the Browns are sitting at 13. If they, I don't know, but if they have somebody they really like at 10, we do have a history of trading with the Browns.
And that would be interesting if they make a move, even though Baker, there's the reporting right now is that Baker's going to be back, but I don't know. That's a tough one too. There's gonna be quarterback hungry teams. There is every offseason. There's never been an offseason in the history of the NFL where teams aren't looking for a quarterback. So that could be an interesting take by Vern. Maybe that 10 spot becomes a really good slot to hold in a draft. DSMY, he says, heard that there is some interest in the tight end from Dallas, but don't know much about him other than he was a Cowboys first pick in 2018 and he's having a good year. He's talking about Dalton Schultz, I believe. I don't know where Dalton Schultz was drafted. I don't believe it was the first round. Do you mind pulling that up for me, Chad? Where was Dalton Schultz drafted? So my brother's big on potentially going after him. My only question is does he shake free? Does Dallas let him walk? Because he's putting up some monster numbers this year. You know, I think he was like around 800 yards receiving this season. So I just don't see him possibly shaking free. Rick Fisher, he says, a number one wide receiver is my hope in the first round. There's going to be a bunch of people wanting the Jets to use that 10th overall pick on that position. That's the other thing, man. There's just like a million directions. Because I want the Jets to go get a linebacker, Nakobe Dean. And I feel like that 10 spot's perfect for him. And this is where it's going to be an ongoing debate all offseason.
Yeah. By the way, Dalton Schultz, fourth round, 2018 draft out of Stanford.
So there you go, fourth round pick. Again, his production's been excellent this year. I personally would be shocked if they didn't, try to re-sign him. All right, straight 100 Jets. What is going on, my man? He says, "What's up, fellas? I just got back from watching the game at the MGM here in Western Maine. Is that Maine? No, Massachusetts. I don't know. What's MA? Massachusetts."
Yeah.
He says, "Take heart that the Patriots are going to be one and done versus Cincy. Mac Jones does not have a playoff arm." We could talk about the other teams now because the Jets are done. What are your thoughts on New England's prognostication in the playoffs coming up here?
It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, they were kind of they went on a 7-game win streak. I don't know. I mean, they lost today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
they lost to Miami in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see them. I'd like to see them lose in round one.
Yeah, I think we all are going to root for that for sure.
Yeah, I think we've all had enough of New England for a while. They could take a break.
Yeah, I think that the Cincinnati Bengals are, I think that's going to be a good matchup actually, and I believe that game will be played in Cincinnati because Cincinnati won their division, so that helps the Bengals. The only thing I will say is that the Patriots' strength, is in their secondary and their coverage ability. So that will help them going against the Bengals, who obviously have some serious weapons on the offensive side of the football. But I'm with you, straight up Jets. If I had to pick right now, I think that I'd have to go with the Bengals at home. That place is going to be rocking, and Joe Burrow is a stud. So I think I'm with you on that one, and definitely rooting for the Bengals, no questions asked. All right, we got Mike Galizia in the chat, and he says, "Remember, with all these top picks, we are going to need about $20 million to sign the rookies. So that is also a factor. Although I do think that they have like the rookie." I can't. It's like a rookie, like not a cap, but there's an allotment that all teams have for rookies. Maybe I could be way wrong on that. But yeah, there's gonna be money that goes towards the signing of our rookie class. So there's no question that's part of it. Rick Fisher says we better re-sign Berrios. How bullish are you on Berrios, Chad? Where are you standing on that one? Do you feel like he's like a necessity? We got to bring him back because there are people who actually believe he could be replaceable. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if the team didn't have so many other priorities right now, then yeah, he probably would be replaceable. But for us, just like we were talking about earlier, we just don't have enough. We have so many other needs that we have to focus on. I think Berrios has earned this spot. He's earned this contract. I would put him up there as probably our number one priority for re-signing free agents going into this offseason. I mean, if we had another slot receiver, if we had another returner, there's just a lack of weapons already. I mean, we felt his lack of presence today.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Zach had 87 yards today I mean, at one point in the game, I think we almost set a record for the least amount of yards in a game. I mean, look, you take away that 46-yarder from Keelan Cole, which was, by the way, was a great throw, but you take that away, we would have had almost literally nothing.
Yeah. Yep.
So look, we said this last year and we're going to say it again. We don't need to be taking uh, any weapons away from Zach.
Yeah, and they seem to be building a rapport. And let's just pretend like Barrios isn't even an offensive player. Just his special teams ability alone should get him a contract. You know what I mean? Like if he didn't even play on offense, he was still one of the best returners in the National Football League this season. So that alone should get him his contract, his re-signing. So I'm with you. I think it is one of the top priorities for the Jets this offseason. It's tricky though because some guys and some agents will say, you know what, hold out, go to free agency, don't take the offer, the first offer that comes your way, because if there are other teams that covet him and covet having a special teams ace like that and a slot guy like that, there could be a bidding war and he could wind up making more money in free agency. So it's going to be tricky, man, because I think Joe Douglas will want to bring him back because I think he sees the value that he brings, not only in special teams but obviously the offense as well. Uh, it's gonna be very, very important that they try to get this done before free agency, because if they don't, they could lose him, which would really suck because he's our guy. Like he's one of the guys that we brought, success to in the NFL. He was with the Patriots. They put him on their practice squad. We scooped him up. That's our guy, and it would suck to really see him have success with another team.
So the question is he going to let it is he and his agent going to let him go to free agency at all and test the waters there? Can we make him such an offer that
Right.
it's not even a possibility?
They might, and that might be what the Jets say. Like you take this offer, or we're out. Like I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna manage that. That's gonna be a very, very difficult situation because I know that the Jets will want to bring him back, and I think Barrios and his agent aren't stupid. Like they know the Jets are in a bind at that position group, and so if they're not getting an offer that they feel like is fair, or that they feel like pays him as one of the best special teamers in the National Football League, they can go to free agency and he can get a lot of money, man. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how they deal with that. Thomas says we need to keep. Sorry, guys, my voice is terrible tonight. He says we need to keep Fant. I don't think we can possibly let George Fant go. One of the best pass blockers in the NFL this year. He was excellent in pass protection. So, he's got 1 year left on his contract. He's going to be one of those guys we have to keep, and we cannot, skimp and cut him to save money because we need him back protecting Zach. When he went down, there was a noticeable difference. On the pass protection at the left tackle spot. Thomas also says draft Jordan Davis, cut Foley. Well, we don't have to cut Foley because he's going to be a free agent. We also have the kid that we drafted this past year, Jonathan Marshall. That could be another reason why you let Foley Fatukasi go, is because you just drafted a defensive tackle, in this last draft, and maybe that's a way that Joe Douglas says to, as he's balancing his checkbook, I can save money at the defensive tackle position by just using, or I guess, moving Marshall up in the depth chart and letting Fatukasi go. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Jordan Davis projects as a mid to late first rounder, so if we're going to draft him, then you're certainly looking at a scenario where we trade down, which is feasible. I mean, let's say for the sake of argument, let's say a team like the Steelers like somebody, I don't know, at 10, we trade down from 10 to 20, 22 or whatever. We pick up Jordan Davis and then a second round draft pick. And it's a possibility. I don't love using a first round pick on a DT, but I mean, I was at a Georgia game. I was at the Georgia Florida game back in October, and from up in the stands, Jordan Davis is a massive human being. I mean, watch him tomorrow night. He's just an absolutely immovable force.
Hmm.
He is awesome. So I mean, I don't get me wrong. I like to see him in green and white if possible.
All right, there you go. Grant Rude says a trade back from 4 or 7. I think what he means is 4 or 10. For someone that wants a quarterback would be fantastic. Yes, that would be huge. It would help the Jets now. It would help the Jets later. That's the other thing that would be really beneficial is to just keep rolling picks into the future. Having more picks, every year really would be beneficial. Let's see. Mac Jones is going to get exposed. He's already getting exposed. He's had some up and down weeks the last month or so of the NFL season. I still think that he's done a really good job this season. I know that's going to bother some people, but I think that he's had a pretty damn good rookie year. I get that he's on a really good football team with a really good coach, but I can't say that he hasn't had a good rookie year. That's just it's a little bit harsh. And I don't know if he's been exposed. He has not played well in certain games, just like all the rookie quarterbacks. They all have their bad moments. Um, don't get it twisted though. I hate him and I hate the Patriots, so I hope you're right. I hope you're right, man. Let's see. Vinny Bad, excuse me. He says, "How about Allen Robinson from the Chicago Bears?" So they tagged him, if I'm thinking correctly. They tagged him. It just depends if he's available. What are your thoughts on Allen Robinson, Chad? He had a down year, but the Bears in general had a down year. Would you add a guy like Allen Robinson to this offense?
I feel like the ship has sailed on him. I feel like at 28 years old, he'll be 29 going into the season. Um, I don't know. I feel like the ship has kind of he did have a down year. I feel like the ship has kind of sailed on them. I kind of put that along with uh, the guy from Green Bay we were talking about last week, where it's kind of like it's just out of the question. I feel like he's out of the question. We need to go younger when it comes to wide receiver position. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's worth looking at, especially if he's available. But I think we need to go younger. I think we need to go with a guy who can actually take a couple seasons and build rapport with Zach, not somebody who's maybe a 1 or 2 year stopgap.
Christian Kirk might be a guy that Jets fans are all talking about when free agency comes up. By the way, free agency is it's like 2 months or so from now, so we have time obviously to really study free agency and have a grasp on who the targets should be or could be. I think Christian Kirk, if he shakes free from the Cardinals, that would be a great guy to have on this team. He can play outside. He can play the slot. He's got speed. He's a playmaker. I think he would be a great fit for this offense, personally. So that would be who I would go after, Vinny. Christian Kirk, if he's available. Let's go ahead and let's get a guy that's, like Chad said, kind of younger and can build, with Zach for years to come, not just for, a year or two. um, Rick Fisher, he says, "I wonder if today's game would have been different if Braxton played. I think it would have helped, but I don't think it would have ultimately changed a whole lot just because of the issues that were going on up front." I think you probably would agree with that, Rick. I could be wrong, but it was such a bad performance overall from the offense. There were drops. The pass protection was bad. Zach held it a couple of times. Overall, it was just a really poor performance. So I don't think Braxton alone would have made a huge, change on what, the result would have been. So Straight 100, another comment here. Great stuff. Thanks for loading up the chat, guys. This is great. He says, "My personal opinion is that the Jets need an edge most of all. You saw Salah's D in San Francisco work when he had Nick Bosa. We need to find our version of the Bosa." I like how he says, "of the Bosa," in the draft. It's going to be a topic that I beat the drum all off season, last off season. I liked the Carl Lawson signing a lot. The guy that I wanted was Trey Hendrickson from the Saints. Um, pass rush is critically important to this defense. That is the foundation of this scheme and of what Ulbrich and what Saleh want to do defensively. So I'm with you, man. Edge is right up there. Like, I want a linebacker, I want an edge rusher before I want a safety, before I want maybe even a cornerback. Like, I want those two position groups addressed first and foremost, just because they're so critical to the way this defense is going to perform. What are your thoughts? Just edge rush. I mean, you can talk a little bit about pass rush if you'd like.
I mean, I agree. We still haven't had a pass rusher since what year is it?
2006, 2005, something like that.
So we're going back to 2005. So so that makes what, 17 years without a pass rusher. I think it's about time.
God.
No, and it's like the, one of the guys in the chat said, I mean, it would have been nice, but look, we're going to miss out again. We're going to miss out on Thibodeau, and we're going to miss out on Aiden Hutchinson. And I mean, that's okay. That's what the wins cost us. But, the problem is that Joey Bosa's don't grow on trees. And it's not like we didn't try this season. I mean, nobody knew that there was going to be a freak injury to Carl Lawson. I mean, by all the reports last offseason, he was killing it in the offseason program, and he was killing it in the preseason. And then, of course, he has to go down with that freak injury. So can he come back from that? We'll see. Is he a long-term answer? I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I'd still like to pair him with the second available pass rusher. Now, is there anybody that's available this offseason? I don't know. But if there is, I think we have to go after them. We have to go after them hard. In fact, let's look that up.
So, free agency wise, I don't know who's available, but there's another guy from Michigan, David Ojabo. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He looks like he could be, somebody that could fit really nicely in this scheme. A very good speed rusher off the edge. There are going to be other pass rushers, not named Thibodeau, whatever you want to say, or Hutchinson, that are good in this draft class. And it's on Joe Douglas, and it's on Robert Saleh, and it's on Jeff Ulbrich to find those dudes and get them in this scheme and get them to produce. No excuses that they're not picking in the top 3. That does not mean that you don't find your pass rusher. You've got to get them. You've got to find them. And that's ultimately what this was about.
According to this sportrack.com site that I'm looking at, the free agent pass rushing market this year is pretty bare. Von Miller, Chandler Jones, Dante Fowler, Calais Campbell. Don't get me wrong, these guys are good, but the youngest of them is Dante Fowler at 27 years old. Akeem Nicks, Jerry Hughes, Anthony Barr. I don't think we're going to try that again. Jadeveon Clowney, William Golston, Melvin Ingram. Yeah, these guys, man, they're all like in their 30s. Oh wow, yeah, I'm just not seeing it. I mean, maybe there's more to it than that, but
and that's okay. That's fine, because that's the thing. Like, Joe Douglas will have some sort of plan this offseason, and if he sits there and he looks at the free agent class for this pass rushing group, and he's like, I don't really see a whole lot, but he sees some guys in the draft, like, then they'll target edge rushers in the draft. Like, that's how you have to navigate the offseason. If you don't see any answers in free agency, you got to get creative, and you got to find some guys in the draft, even if they're not in the first round. I'm actually very much excited to look at the free agent list. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time looking it over, and I'm eager to see what's available. We could really use some offensive line. That's actually where I really want to address the offensive line, is through free agency and the mid rounds of the draft. I know you're going to hate that, but we'll talk about that off and on throughout the offseason. Vern says you can't cut Foley. He's our best run defender. He is. He's a good run defender. The only thing I wonder about with him is his money. Like, how much money does he want? And that's ultimately what I'm kind of sitting here thinking about. Not necessarily that he isn't a good guy to have on the team. Mike Galizia, excuse me. He says extend Fant. That could be an interesting thing. Maybe Joe Douglas says, you know what, you played your balls off this year. You get a contract. Like, he was really, really good this season. I don't think there's any debating it. I don't know if Joe Douglas will do that, though, because he doesn't have to. So it is interesting to think about, though, because he was really damn good this year.
What deal is he on?
He was on a 3-year deal when he signed free agency. I guess it was 2 years ago. And now he's on the last year of that contract. And if I'm remembering correctly, I believe it's like upwards of $10 million for the season for him. But I think that's like fair. Fair compensation for him. And we're not overspending for him by paying him that. Like, I think he proved that he's worth that amount of money.
Yeah, his base salary going into next year is 9.2.
Okay, so a little bit less. I'm keeping him for that. I'm keeping him for that amount of money. I think Connor McGovern also is pushing closer to that number as well. And that's where it does get interesting. Maybe Joe Douglas says, okay, I'm going to cut McGovern, draft Linderbaum, and then use the money that I saved from McGovern to address other needs. I don't know if he ends up doing that. I personally wouldn't do that, but there are people out there that think that that's the way to go. We got an interesting comment from Grant. He says, come on, John, if Wilson is legit, and I know what he's saying when he says that, with the cap space and the draft capital the Jets have, they better be a playoff team this next year. There are people that will agree with you. I still think we need to get to that like 7 to 9 win range, and I in the current NFL structure, 9 wins can get you in the playoffs. So I do hear what you're saying. If they knock it out of the park, if they have another great offseason like I think they had this past offseason, you could be right. There's just so many holes. I feel like we have more. I know it's not true, but I feel like we almost have more holes this offseason than we did last offseason. I know that's not true, but it just feels that way in some ways.
It's also the division. Like this division is just it's just not showing any signs of slowing down. I mean, yeah, I think I think maybe the Bills didn't look as great as they probably could have. But you know what? The Dolphins are doing really good things. I think they have the most or the second most cap space. Look, Josh Allen and the Bills look great. Unfortunately, the Patriots look great. Like, it's just tough. There's a lot of competition out there right now. Yep. It doesn't look easy. The path for us to get to the playoffs does not look easy going into next year.
Yep. And I think that's a great point. I didn't mention that. The division, we didn't win any divisional games this year, and that's not a surprise to anybody. We have to get that turned around before we can even talk about playoffs. We got to start winning some AFC East games. We got to beat the Dolphins, once. We can't keep losing both games to the Dolphins and even to the Patriots. We need to start splitting with these teams, man. We got to go, worst case scenario, 2-4, 3-3 in our division to have a chance.
Yeah.
And so right now, we're just not there yet. And you're right, though, Grant. I'm not knocking what you're saying at all because, again, people do agree with what you're saying. If they have a great offseason, which they obviously are loaded to be able to do, they can flip the script. They can absolutely double their wins. They can go from 4 wins to 8 wins. And to me, that's the magic number right now. If we could get to 8 wins and continue to stack and build, that's what I want. That's what I'm hoping for. And it's early as shit right now. Like it is January. So things can change very quickly. We can address some holes that I'm like sitting here wondering about, and it changes my perspective, but it's hard for me right now to picture that just based on the number of holes that we have. So I'll leave it at that. But I think you're completely in your right to think that way. Let's see. do we keep Mike White as a backup? This is another interesting comment from our chat. So Joe Flacco, I don't believe he's under contract. I don't think so. What are you doing at backup, man? This is a fun conversation we had all last off season. What are you doing about the backup spot? Are you bringing Flacco back? Are you bringing Mike White back?
I don't think Flacco wants to come back. And he is a free agent. He's going to be on the free agency list. And no, I don't want to bring him back. I don't think he ever wanted to be here to begin with. I would bring Mike White back. I mean, I still, I think that we paid the price this year for not having somebody like a Joe Flacco earlier. And I would still look for a quarterback who's willing to be a backup and who's still willing to be a mentor on the field. Because we forget, I mean, this was Zach Wilson's first season. Let me see what quarterbacks are going to be available just for sake of discussion.
And I'll go ahead and I'll agree with that. I think you want to bring a guy like Mike White back because it's not just the fact that he has experience in the NFL playing now. This is a guy that, he has some familiarity with our scheme and our system, and he's been coached under Mike LaFleur now, and he's played for the New York Jets. I would prefer to keep a guy like that showed at least some level of competency, who is not, dirt old, has a great relationship with Zach. I'm up for that. I'm up for bringing Mike White to be brought back as the primary backup. And again, depending on this list that Chad's pulling up, I would expect that it's pretty bare. Do you have the list in front of you, Chad?
Yeah. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, Cam Newton, Tyrod Taylor, Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Marcus Mariota.
There's actually a lot of damn names there. I'm shocked.
Joe Flacco, of course. Mitch Trubisky, Tim Boyle, Blaine Gabbert, Chad Henne, Brandon Allen, Mike Lennon, AJ McCarron, Geno Smith.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. We'll leave it off with Geno. There's a lot of names there, actually, though. Mariota would be interesting as a backup. He was pretty decent as a backup. You had mentioned Andy Dalton. He's another guy that's not terrible as a backup. I wouldn't hate that at all. Again, it always boils back down to financials. So, if they feel like Mike White can do an adequate job as the backup, I say maybe let it rip with him. But those are some good names there. I'm actually surprised. And Jameis Winston, I didn't even mention him. Like, there was a ridiculous tweet that somebody put out saying that the Jets should look to replace Zach Wilson with Jameis Winston this offseason. I would never do that, but as a backup, that would be pretty interesting. I don't know how great of a scheme fit he is or whatever. Maybe he'd be good at it. Running this offense, but he is a guy that can produce as a backup and decent competition. So yeah, man, I'm intrigued.
There's really nothing you can't find on Twitter.
I know, man. It's crazy. It's like it's fun, but it can be so frustrating at times as well. Like you have to take the good with the bad with Twitter. Like there's really good stuff that can come from social media, and there's obviously some really bad stuff. So I try to look at it with a half glass full kind of perspective. Like I personally enjoy Twitter for the banter and the discussion, but then you get some people that just throw takes out there just to get a reaction, which really sucks because I don't know. I just don't really like that so much. Jason Rhodes, thank you, man. He says, guys, let's hit the like button. And I will ask you to do the same thing. If you haven't hit the like button yet, would greatly appreciate that. Thomas Cahill, he is talking about Ojabo. I hope I'm pronouncing his name. David Ojabo would be a nice fallback and a trade down. I don't see how you wouldn't like potentially getting him, in the mix at edge. There's so many holes on this team. That we have the kid, we re-signed Jonathan Franklin Myers. Who is the other pass rusher that I'm my mind is slipping right now?
Tim Ward.
No, well, Tim Ward might be a guy we bring back, but I was thinking of the kid. Shoot, that's gonna bother me. I'm gonna have to pull it up. Here,
Bryce
let me.
Huff?
Yeah, there it is. Bryce Huff. Sorry. I don't know if we can like sit here and say like Bryce Huff is a guy that we can even really count on like for a pass rush. Like, what did he do this season that makes you feel really, really good?
Yeah.
He didn't really do a whole lot, and I know we were all kind of excited about him, but what are you thinking about? Just like again, pretend like Carl Lawson doesn't exist because we know we can. We hope that he comes back from his injury, but aside from Carl, what do we have in the cabinet right now?
The cabinet's pretty bare. Um, so I don't know. And I mean, even Jonathan Franklin Myers kind of quieted down after that contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have just been like circumstance, but um, it's hard to say. It's hard to say that we really have anything that's there that we can count on um, as a consistent pass rushing threat right now. I mean, even once in a while, we just don't have anything.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I'm worried about it. I'm always worried about pass rush though because that's like one of those things where you can't have enough of that position group. You just can't.
right.
DSMY, he says, who do you think is the best edge in this draft? Personally, I like Thibodeau the best because I think he's the most explosive, and he fits. In my opinion, he fits the scheme so perfectly. I don't think we'll have a shot at him. Nothing's impossible though. Guys fall. Maybe the Jaguars take Evan Neal or Ikem, the other offensive tackle that everybody's really high on. Maybe maybe a team like the Detroit Lions, they want to take Hutchinson and they land him at number 2. I think the Lions have the second overall pick. Let me pull that up real quick. Yeah, Lions have 2, Texans have 3. Maybe the Jets and the Texans, maybe they could swap picks or something. Like, I don't know. I'm getting crazy here, but it's not impossible. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that it's not impossible that one of those guys could fall. I like Thibodeau. I like Thibodeau the best. Though. I think he's the best one. What do you think, Chad?
I mean, I think Kayvon Thibodeau is probably going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder because everybody was high on him before the season started, and then we all kind of forgot about him and we started talking about Aiden Hutchinson.
Yep.
Aiden Hutchinson's great, but I think Kayvon Thibodeau has a longer track record of success. I do like him slightly better. Unfortunately, I don't think either one of them is going to get past number 3.
Yeah, it's such a premium position. That's the problem. Um, that's the issue. That's why they're gonna go so high is because it's such a critical position on a football team. Grant Rudy says there's 3 premium tackles in the draft. There will be 1 available with the Jets' second first rounder, assuming they want to grab a tackle. I don't know, man. I know Chad would be in for it. I'm I don't want to spoil it, but I really don't want to do that. And maybe that makes me an a-hole. I really feel like we just have too many other needs. And offensive line is so important. I'm not saying it isn't. Offensive line, defensive line, they are Joe Douglas's philosophy. It's also the philosophy that I agree with. I think that they win games in the National Football League. I really want to address other positions, though, in the first round. But Chad will agree with you, and so many other people will agree with you. There's a ton of good offensive linemen. And I think it's a pretty good offensive line class in general to get some guys.
The challenge is assuming that Becton is going to come back to full strength and consistency, and no one on earth has that answer right now. Yeah. I mean, and that's because I tell you what, if we don't draft or bring in a replacement and he goes down in the first few weeks of the season next year, we're all going to be kicking ourselves, and that line is going to be that much worse. I mean, I like George Fant a lot, but that was not the plan. That was not supposed to be the plan going into this season. and it's not supposed to be the plan going into next season.
Yep. I I hear you. You're not wrong. So the offensive lineman that he's talking about, I believe he's talking about Evan Neal. He's talking about Ikem Ekwanu from NC State. And the other one, I don't see. Let me look here. Offensive lineman. There's a couple here. So I'm not sure if he's talking about Kenyon Green, Charles Cross. There's a couple of names here. There's a bunch of dudes there's a lot of names for the offensive line. Tyler Linderbaum, I didn't even mention. That's a guy that the Jets might be coveting. Joe Douglas might say to himself, I've got my left tackle, I've got my left guard, and now I've got my centerpiece in the middle of my offensive line. I don't know, man. Again, there's so many needs, and that's kind of what Rick Fisher he threw it in the chat a little bit ago. That's where my head I feel like I'm spinning. Like in what position do we go after? It's gonna be crazy. Utah Bullets. It's a new name I haven't seen in the chat. Welcome. It's good to see you. He says, what do you make of all of the injuries the last 3 years, these last 3 seasons with the Jets? Chad, why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I've been a fan for a long time, and of course there have been major injuries, but it does feel like the last 3-4 years, this team has just been decimated, more so than they ever were before. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's an NFL wide issue. But particularly with us, I just can't explain it because it's just been year after year. It's these like soft tissue injuries. Now, there's an argument that's out there that it's happening because of the field turf, and the field turf that they're using these days is somehow conducive to these soft tissue injuries. I don't know how true that is, but it's happening across the board. We've got to find a way to reduce it. They've got to find a way to address it. I would go as far as to say, like, maybe is it worth it to not play any starters in the preseason until like maybe the last game, and then just let them work it out when the season starts, because the injuries are like unavoidable at this point. If we have another Carl Lawson level injury going into next season, I'm gonna be devastated. I really am. It's gonna be awful.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not like you can't just point to one thing and say like, oh, it's totally the field at MetLife, because they suffer injuries at practice. Like they're having injury problems at practice. That's where Carl Lawson got hurt, was during a training camp practice, or was a scrimmage, I think, right? Scrimmaging versus the Packers.
It was the scrimmage out in Green Bay.
So there's not one particular thing. I mean, I think ultimately I will say bad luck. I think, unfortunately, I hate to go that route, but I think a lot of this is luck. Like if you look at the Mekhi Becton injury, and I know it's a sore subject for a lot of people, but everybody who gets hit with another 300-pound dude on their leg like he did, they're going to go down. They're going to get hurt. So bad luck. The field, there's been studies done. I know Frankie from Flatbush, he's got his own channel right now, and he did a lot of, research on it. And there's data that supports that there's an issue with the MetLife Stadium turf, like causing injuries. So I think it's just a multitude of things. And unfortunately, it's still an ongoing issue because we had way too many injuries this year. And again, I know that everybody gets injuries. We all get that. But we have a ton, too many. And it just we need to hit that median a little bit in the NFL. We need to just be somewhere in the middle as regards to injuries, not necessarily in the top half. So, all right, let's move on. Grant Rudy says May is a solid player. A DUI isn't stopping an NFL team from signing him. The Jets need to bring him back on a 2 to 3 year deal. I don't think they're going to re-sign him to a 2 to 3 year deal. I will disagree with you on that. I think he will get a 1 year deal from the Jets or from another team. It's going to be a prove it deal. And you're right, though. the DUI isn't going to stop an NFL team from bringing him in. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. Like, that happens every year in the NFL. Like, there are guys getting arrested for stuff, so it will not stop a team. Vern throws out Carl Laftis. The Greek freak is what he's calling him. The kid, I think is he from Mizzou? Missouri?
Purdue.
Purdue. Sorry. I don't know. I've watched a little bit of him. To me, when I look at him, he just kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Jonathan Franklin Myers, like a bigger bodied guy, not as explosive, not as twitchy. There are people that really like Carl Laftis, though. I'm going to be trying to do my research now. Now that the season's over, I'm going to learn a little bit more about these players. It's really no different from last off season. I have to do some more watching and some film study of these guys to really learn about them. So hopefully I can make some videos like I did last year and made a bunch of draft videos. That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep it moving here. Rick Fisher says 2 years from now the Jets should be in the playoffs. I would say that if they're not in the playoffs in 2 years, then we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. We got Jeremy in the chat. He says, next year we will have another crop of rookies playing. 8 wins would be very acceptable. It's all heading in the right direction. Feeling good. Yeah, and let's take a look at our poll here. We got 30 votes on the poll. I asked everybody, I said, what are your feelings as we enter the 2022 offseason? And I will just go ahead and I'll snap a picture of that because it looks like most people are happy and they're excited about the future of this team. I'm that person that's nervous. I do believe that we have a lot of question marks. That would be the one that I would vote for. Doesn't mean that I'm not optimistic or that I'm not hopeful for the franchise, but I'm just so nervous about what we're gonna do to fill all these holes. So
yeah.
All right, let's keep it moving here. Got a lot of chat to catch up on. Joe Campione, he says, between the draft and free agency, the Jets are adding 6 quality starters. I think that's a good, reasonable number. The Jets are not going to be like bringing in an entire, like one half of the team worth of starters. Like, we're not going to have 11 new starters on the team next season, unless I'm way wrong. I couldn't see it that way, though. I personally think 6 is a very reasonable number, and I think that, realistically speaking, we'll probably get at least 3 or so from the draft, hopefully, to begin the year. And then you're hoping for a couple in free agency as well. So I actually like that number quite a bit. Vern says bring Big Ben back as a backup. He's going to retire, dude. He's so done, and he's so washed. Big Ben is toast. He is done. That's just my take, though, personally. Of course, he would be a great coach. He would be a good guy to have on a coaching staff because he's been playing the NFL for so long. I'm just not sure he's interested in doing that. Alrighty. Let's see. Schultz is okay. Nothing special. Hell of a lot better than anything the Jets currently have. I think Schultz is good for the one specific reason is that he can do a little bit of everything. He can block and he can get, out into running some routes and be effective doing it. Don't need him to be like a George Kittle or anything like that. Darren Waller. But we sure as hell need somebody to play tight end because it's not good enough. Jason Rhodes, he says, John, I don't think the holes are as bad as you think. And that's nice to hear coming from you because usually you're a little bit more, not pessimistic, but you're a little bit more, you're a little more pessimistic. I'll stick with that one. That sounds about right. Joe Campione, he says that David Ojabo is a 3-4 outside linebacker. He could probably put his hand in the dirt, but you aren't wrong, though. He is a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker from Michigan. Same thing for Aiden Hutchinson. I do think that Ojabo could probably put his hand in the dirt, though. That's just my personal twist on it. Rodrigo Costa, he says we need another true edge. Move Jonathan Franklin Myers to the interior of the line. I actually want to talk about that because we did see Jonathan Franklin Myers kind of just vanish on us a little bit here. What are you thinking about him moving back to the inside? Not necessarily on a like 100% basis, but should he be maybe playing next to Quentin Williams more and then Carl Lawson on the outside, and then hopefully we can draft somebody? What are your thoughts on maybe moving him back to playing more inside pass rushing?
Well, I think that was the original plan going into this season. If it wasn't for the injury to Carl Lawson, we probably would have seen more of that. But unfortunately, we didn't. Now, if Carl Lawson comes back, and if we do decide to draft an edge rusher or pick up an edge rusher in a free agency, then I could see him moving back inside. But there's two pretty big ifs that we have to be addressed before that decision happens.
Yep. Okay, Vinny Bad, he says Chris Godwin, and I'm very glad you guys are just throwing names out there. It's really cool. I don't want to say that I think he will shake free. He was tagged this year. There's a decent chance that the Bucs let him go. What are your thoughts on if he is available? Would you go after Chris Godwin? I would really like that. He is coming off of an injury though.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one. I'm
Good receiver though.
Yeah. No, I mean, I really want to have a youth movement at the receiver, and there's something about
he's only 25 years old.
Well, no, I mean, I guess specifically coming out of the draft. I mean, there's something about drafting a wide receiver. I prefer to draft that position, if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not as high on Chris Godwin. I'm more high on some of the free agent tight ends that might be out there.
He did tear his ACL and his MCL. It's not impossible for him to rebound from that injury. An ACL or MCL tear is not in any way a career ender. But he did suffer it late in the season, so you have to imagine he's going to be rehabbing all off season. I would be very interested if he's available. You could put my name down for somebody that would be totally fine with being aggressive and getting him to play on the outside for Zach Wilson. Whether or not he does shake free and whether or not he wants to play for the New York Jets, I think those are two different things. Will he want to play for the Jets? I don't know. Not sure. Rick Fisher says, would artificial turf be better or worse? Well, we already have artificial turf. I think that could be one of the reasons why we have so many injuries is because of the artificial turf. Some people describe the turf as like sticky, like their cleats get stuck when they're running around, and it can cause them to have those bad injuries where their legs are getting stuck underneath of them. Kind of like the Nick Bosa situation. I would rather they go to natural grass, kind of like the Cardinals do. They have that whole system where they wheel in the grass for the games and then they wheel it back out to allow it to grow and to get sunshine and all that other crap. We used to have, natural grass at MetLife, the old MetLife. So, I don't know. I feel like that's where football is supposed to be played, is on grass. So, we don't have to talk about, what turf we're playing on. But personally, I think natural grass would be the better way to go about it. So,
yeah.
Alrighty. Green is an AVT level guard. Some say even better. But are we going to spend another first round pick on a guard? That's the question. This is my problem. And this is where I'm going to be like a jerk all off season, man. I swear to you. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know with linebacker being an issue. Cornerback, potentially they might need to get a corner. Edge, wide receiver. I don't know if they're going to draft a tight end in the first round, but tight end's a really big issue as well. I don't know.
I mean, we gave up 9 sacks today. That's that's not normal. And could you imagine AVT paired with another guard of his caliber on the other side? I
Yeah.
mean, wouldn't it be awesome?
Yes. Yes. Having a dominant offensive line would be, of course, awesome. But my only thing is we don't have. I will say it forever. We don't have to draft an offensive lineman in the first round for them to not only be good, but to be able to be a starter. We saw it in two circumstances. The Chiefs got the center. Um, crap. I'm so bad with name recall. They got the guard from Tennessee, who's been kicking ass all year. And then who's the center? I can't remember his name.
Oh, Creed Humphrey?
Creed Humphrey. Thank you.
Yeah.
And they got them in the mid rounds. And I know that doesn't always happen. Like, you're not always going to get a home run like that in the mid rounds with offensive line. But I really would prefer that they go that route. Trey Smith, thank you. I see it in the chat now. Just, we've got to get that blue chip player in the first round. And I feel like it should be at a different position group. That's just all I'm going to say. And I know that there's going to be people that disagree with me. I know Chad disagrees with me. And I can live with that. Becton says that Jason Rhodes says that Becton is not a franchise left tackle. Vinny Bad, he says they got to eat McDonald's. Laugh my ass off. That's what that's what Chad Ochocinco thinks. Ochocinco, he was like a vehement defender of the McDonald's the menu. He thought that it was like you could be in great shape and eat McDonald's. And he would eat McDonald's all the time. I remember on Hard Knocks, he was always like pulling through McDonald's and getting cheeseburgers and French fries and all that other nonsense. All right. Vern says neither is Fant. Becton gets the first go. What do you think about that? Will Becton play right tackle this upcoming season, and will they keep Fant at left tackle?
That's the ultimate question. Is that they didn't draft Mekhi Becton to try to mold him into a right tackle in his third season. It's arguably the biggest question mark of the offseason. I don't see that happening. But at the same time, you can't say that they're going to let go of Fant because of how good that he played this year. I don't know what's going to happen with Becton, and I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen with Becton. I would say that they're more likely to make a trade away for him as opposed to try to mold him into a right tackle. That just makes more. I don't see him wanting to play anything other than left tackle.
Yeah, that's the thing that is concerning is will Becton be pissy if they push him to right tackle because we saw it in Baltimore. They moved Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah.
They moved him from left tackle to right tackle, and he was pissed. He said, "Get me the hell out of here! Trade me to Kansas City. I want to play left tackle." And so, could Becton do the same thing? I mean, he's not the same player as Orlando Brown, or he hasn't done it on a consistent basis like Orlando Brown Jr. But could that potentially happen? I think it's possible. Definitely. I don't think there's any question that could be something that really bothers him. All right, let's get to Tony G. We're going to wrap up the show here shortly, guys. I am planning on doing the Wednesday live streams, so if you were really grumpy at me about, stopping the Wednesday night streams, they are back, baby. We will be doing our Wednesday live stream probably this coming Wednesday. We're going to start that, and we'll do mock drafts. We'll talk off-season. We'll do... Honestly, a lot of the off-season is going to be a lot of hypothetical stuff. And we'll talk NFL playoffs. So if you're into that kind of conversation, hope you guys, tune in for the Wednesday shows. They are very popular. A lot of people really like them and were really mad at me when I stopped them. So Tony G, he says, we can win with this exact offensive line group, in my opinion. Depth is needed. Also need a wide receiver 1, wide receiver depth, playmaking tight end, and a big running back that can make plays. Our small stature players will get injured. He also says that corner is required and a safety, but not a safety in round 1. Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like, that's kind of where I'm at, like, with offensive line. We can definitely add to the offensive line, get some free agents, get some mid round picks, but we got to get some of these other position groups squared away. Because I think that the offensive line, prior to a million injuries happening, had some moments. We had moments versus the Bucks. We had moments versus the crap. Here we go. Who's another team that we ran all over? The Bengals we did pretty decently against, I think. Running
Oh
the
yeah.
football. There were other games too, though. All right, let's go to this. Wow, McGovern has to go. There are people that agree with you, Vern. We'll do this comment, and then we've got one more. What are your thoughts on McGovern? Whether or not they bring him back? I don't know what his salary cap. What's his contract look like? But what are your overall thoughts on McGovern keeping him or letting him go?
I didn't like him in the beginning of the season, but his PFF grade steadily went up and up and up, and the way people were talking about him is pretty high. So I'm in favor of bringing him back if possible. Now I'm still a fan of drafting Tyler Lindenbaum, but if that doesn't happen, then I want to keep Connor McGovern as much as possible.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just muted myself because I was trying to pull it up on the computer. So here is the number. So his base salary is 9 million next season, and he's got a dead cap hit of 1.3 million. So all in all, he's at like a $10 million, cap number for next season. If the Jets are going to draft Linderbaum, that could make sense. You cut McGovern, or maybe even you ask him to take a pay cut and move him to guard. I get all of that, and I think that makes sense. I don't know if I'm ready to get rid of him entirely, though. That gets me concerned because then you're banking on that you're going to not only be able to replace him with somebody as good, if not better, but also that you're going to be able to replace him and then also get depth because we didn't have a good enough center play. Obviously, this it's just not good enough. So, all right, there was one more comment I wanted to get to, and we've talked about position groups, and we're going to talk about them all off season. And by the way, Chad, congrats on going back to school. Chad is going to work on getting his MBA. I hope you don't mind me sharing that.
Yeah.
So we won't see Chad quite as much during the off season, as far as I understand. But I can imagine that you will be available some weeks, and you'll be able to pop on and be a part of the show every once in a while. So I do want to hear from you though before we go. So it's Rick Fisher, just a very simple, straight up question. He just says, "What's the most important position that we need to address?" It's hard to say what's the most important, but why don't you go ahead and take a spin at that, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Off the top of my head, I'm gonna say pass rusher. If we can get an edge rusher some way somehow, it would be awesome. I mean, I was only asked for one, so that's where I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at edge rusher. I know you expected me to say guard or center, but I know I'm very tempted to say guard or center, but I'm saying edge rusher right now.
Well, Jason Rhodes agrees with you. Rodrigo, congrats you as well. I'm going to say wide receiver, actually. I feel like wide receiver is a really, really important position to address. Just so many question marks in that position group. I'm going to say that if we want to see the best out of Zach, we got to get him a guy that he can throw it up to, and he doesn't even need to make a great throw. Just the guy's going to go make a play. And there are guys like that in the NFL on really good offenses with really good quarterbacks. And I think of a guy like Mike Williams. He's not the best wide receiver in the world, but he can go up and he can go get that damn ball out of the air. And we need more guys like that. Like, who's that guy on this offense right now? And I don't think we have one. So,
No.
All right, one more comment. Grant Rude. He says, "Come on, John. O-line is average. Lawson coming back with Huff. They need one good edge, one vet cornerback, one linebacker, one wide receiver, one outside wide receiver, and they're a playoff team. No way you see otherwise if you believe in the quarterback." I do believe in the quarterback. I'm very excited about the quarterback, and I do believe that we can improve this football team quickly. But I'm just not ready. I'm not going to talk about the playoffs. I'm gonna pretend like the playoffs don't even exist, even though they clearly do, and they begin this coming week. We just have to get better. And you're right, though. I do hear what you're saying. If Zach Wilson is the guy, and if we're going to be anything, he needs to be able to get this team to elevate. But I think that you can see that with improvements being made around them. So I'll leave it at that. This is going to conclude. This is a sad moment, actually. This is going to conclude the NYJ Today post-game show for the 21-22 New York Jets season. Any final things you want to say as we have now completed a season with the New York Jets, Chad?
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. This has been a whole lot of fun each and every week. I certainly appreciate it. I know that this isn't the biggest show, but this is the most fun in terms of the chat being very active and lively. We definitely appreciate that.
Yep. All right, guys, that'll be it. I will hope to be streaming with you on Wednesday. Vern's ready. He's like, let's start the off season. We will start the off season this coming Wednesday. I think that's going to be the plan. I think it's going to be Mike and I, so we'll be able to make fun of everything that he that he throws out there for a fix for the New York Jets. And we'll bring up Penei Sewell. That'll be part of the conversation as well. Anyway, that's going to be it. Go Jets. Hope you all enjoyed the show. We will see you for the post-game show next August. So go Jets. Word from my daughter. Peace, guys. Have a good night.